what we said just now,
Okay.
became very obvious to us during all the exposure we had to senior people in businesses that were trading in fruit and vegetables, that many of them didn't understand that fresh produce is still alive.
Yeah.
And hence they didn't understand how critical it was to keep the product cold so that it would stay fresh and therefore maintain its value. So that was a big challenge to try and get that across to them. And through that, we developed our training course. So, meat, protein products, fish and meat and chicken are dead, but there's a different set of problems there because you have bugs that try and that live on the meat or fish, and that's what gives them the very off flavors and makes them age faster than they would unless they were refrigerated.
Yeah. Yeah. The produce being alive is an interesting question because yes, I agree with you. I always remember the surprise on people's faces when the statement is made that this is still alive. And only when you start explaining to them that the alive is because these produce items often are green, and because they're green, they will still function, they will still metabolize. And in fact, the heat that they produce is a residual of this being
Process.
alive, the respiration, the activity of being alive. And then what happens is that the temperatures will build up. Unless you can keep it cold, the temperatures will keep on being built up. So, you know, it's the only way to get rid of these temperatures is actually to be effective in terms of how you run your cold chain, not just in temperatures, but also in airflow.
Yes.
You know, and if you think about something such as ripe stone fruit, for instance, you know, and the fact that it's already ripened means that they will very fastly decay unless you can actually get the airflow across them efficiently. And the length that growers go to actually make sure that they get them cold in the first place and then maintain that coldness throughout the chain. You know, it's the design of the packaging. There's so many different things that play a role in doing that. But I think the surprising thing is that we forget about the deteriorate that gets heated by the product itself.
Yeah, the heat of respiration.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that stands out for me was bananas. You remember the tracking we did the bananas, where the bananas were packed on a pallet in these long boxes, and then what happened is as the journey went on, the temperature came up. And I remember it was a journey from Joburg to Cape Town, in a specific retailer's DC, and when it arrived in the DC, there was 15 degrees difference between the inside of the pallet and the outside of the pallet. Outside of the pallet, obviously, there was airflow and cooling happening. Inside of the pallet, there was no airflow, and the cooling wasn't efficient a lot. You got 15 degrees increase. No wonder these bananas went off quicker than the ones on the outside. You know, but it all comes down to the heat that can be generated by the fruit itself. And the greener, the more respiration will take place. And a lot of the veg that we actually have, you know, are juveniles. They're babies. We pick them before the flower opens, or we pick them before they actually form a flower. You know, I think about broccoli.
Yeah.
Broccoli is actually a flower, an inflorescence of flowers. And what we do is we pick it before the flower opens, and when the flower actually opens, we say, no, it's off. Because now it's got a different smell to it, and it's not as appetizing, but it's purely a flower, you know, and there's actually nothing wrong with it, but our perception of quality is that. So yeah, really interesting examples around respiration and fruit and veg quality.
Yeah, and I think one of the other challenges was getting the managers of the operations to understand that they would say, well, we've measured the temperature here, and if you consider a huge cube of a room with like 50 tons of produce in it, but they're measuring it right next to the refrigeration units instead of measuring it on the far side where all the product was. And that's why there were often problems.
Or at the door.
Or at the door.
Yeah.
And so it was a process of us understanding why they didn't understand, so we could try and teach them what the right processes were, and where the right places were to put the temperature recording devices, and change the packaging often.
But also the understanding that some of these veg and fruit had a very low respiration rate. Something that the trade would refer to as hard veg, for instance,
like
potatoes, sweet potatoes, all those, they respire at a much lower rate, and therefore generally don't pick up a lot of heat, and they're not as affected by the temperature as something like stone fruit or grapes or broccoli
leafy veg.
Leafy veg, very quick. Because on top of being a veg, leafy veg are so thin. So they lose their temperature in an instant.
And they lose their moisture.
Yes. Well, I often think about the example. I used to visit a lot of distribution centers and pack houses throughout my career. And one of the things I so remember so well is the leafy veg in the little packs, the little plastic pillow packs, they call them. And the moment you see that pillow pack become stiff, then you realize, well, hang on, it's because of the respiring leaf inside that actually formed the gases. And now it's the fact. So there's always an easy way to spot temperature abuse, because suddenly you can just see this pillow pack now being like
blown
rock
up.
Solid, blown up. Almost like the safety bags in cars.
It's exactly the same principle. So it's unfortunately a very complex subject, which is difficult to make understandable for people who are having to spend a lot of money on equipment and systems and people. And they will always, in executive management, they're always looking to manage the costs, which is what they're there for. Spreadsheets. But fresh produce, you cannot cut corners with your costs.
But it brings to mind two things. The one is knowledge about the products. So if you understand your product and its respiration rate, you can allocate it to a place in your DC that either has more or less airflow. And the second thing is running an efficient refrigeration system and being aware of the hot and cold spots that you might find within your system. And you have to marry those two effectively with each other. So you want to put your most sensitive products in the areas that will maintain its temperature much better, and give the other products as less discerning, and it can actually be placed in other spots. So if you have a problem with a door that is leading to the ambient temperature outside, and that hot air can actually come in, don't place a sensitive product close to that door, because you will have problems. And the fact that it's sensitive and a higher respiring fruit or veg will make the whole thing worse. So it's difficult to get people to understand the level of detail that you actually have to go into to running a DC for a produce company or a pack house, for that matter.
And particularly the transport. Because ideally there should be 3 temperature zones in a refrigerated truck. Frozen, and then about +4, and then about +10. And the +4 and 10 would be for those different products. Like you have your broccoli at the +4, and you have your mangoes or subtropical fruit at the +10. But it's too expensive to do that. So they have to compromise.
That's an important point.
And the compromise is often too big of a compromise.
And compromise is often driven by the volume of goods moving through the supply chain or the cold chain, as opposed to the sensitivity of the product. And just the understanding of the product and how you'll use that will make a big difference in terms of how you pack it. Because nowadays, with all these fancy computer programs, you can allocate the spaces very accurately of where you position it into the DC. But it brings that whole thing about a science and an art. It's the science of what happens to the product, and then the art is how to pull all of this together to some sort of resolution where the compromises are not as big to the product, and therefore you can extend the life of the product.
And they still make money.
That's
what it at the end of the day.